Hey everybody, it's Brad with another Floriani Total Control U video for you today. This month I've got a whole bunch of new people in Floriani Club because of the trade-in Masterworks program that Floriani started doing, where you could trade in your old Masterworks software towards Floriani for a discounted price. So there's going to be a lot of people that are new in class, and I think that the best way to learn is to be thrown in the deep end, sink or swim. So we are going to be digitizing entire embroidery design from scratch today. It's a simple design, but we are going to digitize it manually, and we're going to digitize it the right way, and we're going to learn some neat, interesting stuff. So even if you know what you're doing, watch the video, because it's some stuff that you might not know about. Anyway, let's get started. Open up your Floriani software, and on the My Floriani Today page, click Create a New Design. There we go, and it'll open up your design field. We're going to be digitizing from a backdrop today, meaning we're basically going to be tracing an image to create our stitches. To do that, we go over on the left-hand toolbar. There is a little mountain scene here, and when you hover your mouse over it, it says Backdrop Tool. This will load up a picture for us. I went ahead and clicked on that, and then you're going to navigate to wherever the image is on your computer. I'm going to have a link to it on the description of this video on YouTube, and if you're watching this off the CD, this design is actually on your CD. So we're going to hit Open on this image of the corgi here. Okay, hit open, and there he is. Now, a lot of times when you get good artwork off the internet, like I did with this, it's going to be very, very large, and you're going to want to resize it before you go and start digitizing it. Because if we start digitizing it at this size, this is really big. Your first clue is that the grid got real small. And if we look over here on our backdrop properties, we can see the width is 25 inches. So this we wouldn't really be able to even sew out on anything because it's enormous. It's like 2 feet wide. And we don't want a corgi that's quite that large. So we're going to size this down. The way we're going to do it is in the properties menu, set the width. Just go ahead and change this value from 25 to 4 inches and hit apply. There we go. So it sized it down. It's no longer centered, which doesn't really matter that much, but we're going to drag it close to center anyway. So just grab anywhere on the corgi, just left click and drag it so that it's closer to center. It doesn't have to be exact though. Just drag them right in there. And then we're going to zoom in a little bit. Either you can scroll with your mouse wheel, which is what I'm doing here, or you can go up to this little percentage up here at the top and change that to fit, and it'll zoom in as big as it can and fit it all on your screen, which is probably the best way to do that, really. And then I'm also going to do something else. I'm going to have you turn off your grid entirely. Lately I've been digitizing without the grid on, and I kind of like it, so you can do it too. You don't have to if you don't want to. But to turn this grid off, and that's these lines, you just right click anywhere on this ruler or on this ruler, right click, and then here where this says show grid, just hit that. You can also do it, there's a button somewhere, where's the button, here we go, this button. This turns the grid on and off also. That's probably the faster way to do it. I've always done it this way. Anyway, grid's off. Now we're gonna start digitizing this little dog. So before we digitize a design, we want to come up with kind of like a plan of attack, what order we're gonna digitize the thing in, and kind of what layers on what. So let's take a little look at this dog here. Let's see. So his fur, we've got basically 2 different colors for his fur, plus we've got the shading, which is kind of like a we're just gonna lay some gray thread on top of this filled in part eventually, and we'll just use the same color gray for here. Let's see. So I think that the first thing that needs to go down is the darker color. Yeah, because this kind of like is like overlaid on it, and I want this part to kind of be overlapping this part a little bit, in so much as there is overlap. So looking at this, and I'm thinking the order that we're going to do this is the kind of like burnt orange, and then the tan, and then the pink, and then the black, and then the gray. That is my plan. Or maybe the gray and then the black, because look, his mouth is kind of over this shading. So you always want to have kind of like a plan in mind when you first start looking at a design. Think what should go first, what should go second. Um, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking I'm going to start with this little teeny tiny triangle here. We're going to ignore any shading because we're going to actually create the shading by layering other stitches on top of existing stitches. So this, we're going to treat this as if this entire little triangle here was one color, even though technically this is like a darker shade over here because that's where the shadow of his other leg is. So we're going to do this part and then this part, and then I think I'll do the tops of the ears and then the face here. That's my plan for that, and then we'll work out the rest when we get to it. So let us get started. So to begin tracing this guy, the main tool that we're going to be using is this one right here. It looks like a little set of barbells. It's the line tool, and what this does is it lets us create straight lines. And so I'm going to left click on that. My cursor turns into this like crosshair thing, and I get these lines that show me exactly where my cursor is. And the way we're going to do this is we're just going to draw just on the hard points of this. So the hard points are here, here, and here. So I'm going to left click once here, and once here to get these 3 points in, and then I'm going to close this shape, and there's a keyboard shortcut to close a shape so that it's not an open line, and that is Shift C. So I'm going to hit Shift C on my keyboard, and now you can see that closed and finished my my triangle there. So let's go ahead and edit this shape a little bit. To edit it, you're going to go up to your select tool here, just left clicked on the select tool, and see how it highlights it. It's got all this stuff around it. We've got all these different icons. The icon that I'm going to work with is this one. This is the shape tool. We're going to left click on that, and then I might zoom in a little bit too. So if I scroll my mouse wheel, see how it zooms in a little? I'm just using my mouse. If you're not using a mouse, you can zoom in with this percentage up here. And then I'm going to use my arrow keys on my keyboard to be able to pan around to here. So see how this is curved in slightly on this side? To achieve that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move my mouse over the line that needs to be a curve, and you see how it does this little icon? That means it's going to allow me to pull the line into a curve. So if I hold my left mouse button, I just left clicked and I'm dragging down. You see how it bends this line all around? I want to bend it down so that it matches the line in the original, just like that. And then I can also grab these blue dots, and if one of my points was misplaced, I can move it just like that. Okay. And maybe I'll bend this one down a little bit to give it a little kind of a bit of a natural curve there. And then once I'm satisfied with my shape, I can just go ahead and hit the select tool again, and boom, now it is no longer in the line editing mode, so I don't have the line highlighted in purple or anything. So we're also going to change the color, so pick a color that is like the dog's fur. I'm going to just do this light brown, and then we're going to fill it with stitches. So I'm going to use just my standard fill down here, this one that looks like the first purple star. Left click on that, and boom, now it fills it in with stitches. Put that in 3D. See, there's stitches there. And the next thing we're going to do is we need to get the needle from here over to here, and we don't want to have the machine do a cut. What I mean by that is between areas of the same color, if you have a machine that cuts jump stitches, it'll automatically cut. But we want to avoid that, and then especially if you have a machine that doesn't cut jump stitches, you really want to avoid that. But so what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that there's a running stitch that goes from here over to somewhere in here, and the reason for that is, like I said, we don't want it to cut, and the reason we can get away with it is there's going to be beige stitching that goes down on top of this to hide our movement. So this area here, we actually do need to use our shape tool again because we want to make sure of where the start and stop point are for this element. So if we hit the shape tool again, once it stitches, this green dot is where it starts stitching this, and this red dot is where it stops. So we will put our start doesn't really matter for this. I'm just going to stick it up here just for the sake of doing it. And then the stop, I'm going to move it as close as I can to this little corner of the shape of his body right here, right? And then once we do that, we can use the select tool again to generate it. It doesn't change the way my stitches look, but now we're going to use this tool here, this run stitch tool. And instead of using the line tool, we're going to use this run stitch tool. We're just going to click once here, right at the end where our stop was, and then once right in here, in the inside of the dark brown fur here. And then you right click one time, and that's all you have to do. That's just generated a run stitch. I'm going to put it in 3D so we can see. See, that is stitches already. And it's just generated that stitch so that it will automatically run from here to here and not put in a cut there. Anyway, so now we're going to draw in our next shape, which is going to be this big bulk of his body here. And the way we're going to do this is going to look really strange if you're not used to the way the artwork tools are in this program. So just bear with me. Just hang tight and believe me that this is going to work out in the end. So I'm going to use my line tool. I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to just follow the arch of his back. But once this curve starts, oh, and look what I did. I just right-clicked on accident, and that generated, it deleted what I had done on my line so far. So if you ever do that, it's okay. You just go ahead and start over again. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to click here right where the curve starts, and then I'm going to ignore the curve and just go straight to the next little hard point, which is also called a cusp. So there, this whole thing is curve. We're going to go straight to here. So it's a straight line from there to there. And then same deal with this, where this has this big long curve. We're going to just go straight to there. Now this is a straight line. And then this is a little bit of a curve, but again, we're ignoring all curves and just going just to the cusp points. There, to there, to there, to there. And then this one has a little bit of an S shape. So what we want is we want to find the middle of that S shape and put our point there. And then our next point is the first one, so that means we have to close our shape. Shift C to close our shape. And then we're going to go and select with our select tool. That highlights this crazy shape I just made, and we again use the shape tool here. And now we can grab our curves and move them all. So that one, and this one, and this one. That's how we get that little S shape in. This gets pulled out a little tiny bit. And if you need to zoom in a little bit, you can. I'm going to curve this one up just a, oh, it's actually curved down a little tiny bit. This one goes down a little tiny bit. Now here's a big, big curve. So we pull this out, and we see that it doesn't quite perfectly match the original. What we can do is left click on that curve, and you see these two handles that just showed up? That lets us increase the amount that one of the sides curves out. So we select it again, and we do the other side. See how that let me spread that curve out? We're going to have to do the same thing with this one. We grab this and pull it out as far as we can, but you see it's just not wide enough. So we select the curve, and then we manipulate these two handles here, and we do the same thing on the other side, and then you can grab that curve and pull it down till it's perfect. Now you can sit there and mess with it till it's perfect if you want. I'm just going to leave it like that. It looks good enough to me. So there we go. We've got his body generated, and we're going to apply a stitch to it. The standard fill stitch is the one we're going to use down here. There we go. Now let's take a look at this in 3D. Well, this certainly does work, but wouldn't it be cool if we could make this textured, make this textured to look like fur? And I'm going to share with you a cool way that we can turn a fill stitch from a flat, boring type fill to one that kind of replicates the look of animal fur. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our fill selected, and we're going to go over here to the fill type, and we're going to change this from the pattern, normal pattern is pattern 1, and we're going to go down and change this to satin and hit apply. Okay, now that does not look better. Okay, that looks terrible. I know that looks terrible. So what we do is we're going to add what's called a random split to this satin stitch, which is going to make a really interesting look. If you go in your properties over here, you see how there's a little arrow on the right hand side by these tabs? Hit that, and then you should be able to hit this tab that says split. We're going to change this from none to random, leave the defaults alone, and then hit apply. Look at that. Isn't that an interesting looking stitch? So that's a cool way to generate an area that looks interesting. So we want all of his fur to be this type of stitch, basically. So instead of having to go and do that every single time, what we're going to do is we're going to save this as a preset so that we can just apply it to any area that we generate. And the way that you do that is you're going to go down to the little star. You see how it has a little arrow next to it? You're going to left click on that arrow and choose Save Preset. It's going to ask you for a name. We're going to call it the dog fur. It tells me that it's saved successfully. Wonderful. And then we can even go back and change this one so that it's the same type by left clicking on it and then hitting the arrow and choosing the dog fur overlay. So now that is going to match with the rest of his fur, and that is what we'll do for his little face too. What about his ears, I hear you saying? Yeah, his ears are actually going to be a different type of stitch, and that is the next thing we're going to do is digitize these ears. So let's see, what do we got to do? We got to make sure that the start point for this fill that we created is at the same spot where we stopped that run stitch, which is roughly this corner. And then we want the stop point to be somewhere close to up here. So the way we do that is we can select it, use our shape tool, and we look for our start and our stop point. Look at that, it put our start point there already. It's almost as if it realizes what we're doing. It automatically sets our start and our stop point. Spoiler alert, it does do that. And so then we're going to change the stop point to up here, and then we're going to have a run stitch that goes up to, say, right here. So bear with me if you don't understand why we're doing this run stitch thing. But we have our stop here. We're going to go and use the run stitch tool again. This one looks like a little snake. Click on that, and we're going to click from here just straight across, and we're going to end right around there. Okay, and that is called a travel stitch. We just right click, it's generated, it's done, that is ready to rock and roll. We don't have to do anything else to it. It automatically will start here and stop here. And then we need to draw this. So this is a skinny little narrow shape. And skinny little narrow shapes you don't use a fill stitch on. Skinny little narrow shapes you use a satin stitch on, and that's what we're going to digitize next. So we've done run stitches, we've done fill stitches, now we're going to do a satin stitch. And those are the 3 types of stitches in general that there are in embroidery digitizing. So we'll be hitting all of them. Anyway, we're going to trace this. So the way we do that is I'm going to zoom in on this area here and then pan. You can use either the arrow keys or the arrows that you just saw me clicking on. And we're going to use the line tool. And we're going to start here. I'm going to put one click up here. So that's tracing the outside edge. And then we're going to do kind of right there. And then give it another one here. Up in the middle. And then back down to here. Okay. Close the shape. Shift C. Whoop. And then we'll select it with the select tool and use the shape tool to pull out our curves. And again, if you have to, don't hesitate to use the little handles by selecting your curve and pulling on them to get it exactly the way that you want. So you select the curve you want to edit, and then you can move the handle for the side that needs to be adjusted. And it's kind of like you just kind of get a feel for how these little handles work. You just twiddle the little handle around and you can see what changes you're making. But anyway, once you have a shape that kind of looks like this, you're done. You can select it, and then we're going to apply a stitch to it. This time we're going to apply a satin type stitch instead of a fill type stitch, even though our fill has a satin overlay. This might be confusing, but this is still a fill stitch. This is going to be a satin stitch, and there is a cheaters tool that works really well for simple shapes. And that is this icon here. So for right now, the only way we're going to be dealing with satin stitches is using this tool here, the Auto Satin tool. So I want you to left click on that, and it will automatically generate a beautiful satin stitch um, that goes around the outside ear, and it's going to look just nice. So now we are going to let's see, what do we need to do? Oh, we need to make sure that it starts here, and we actually also want it to stop here. So we're going to select it, use the shape tool, and see where our start and our stop points are. Look at that. They're already in the right places. So we want this to start and stop here because over here, well, I guess we could technically have traveled from there to there, but it's kind of far. So we want to have our next travel stitch go from here over to here. Again, we're putting in these travel stitches using the run stitch. We go from where the red dot was on our last shape. We're going to take it over to where we're going to have the green dot on our next shape. Just like that. So that's one click there, and then right click. Wonderful. Now we're going to do the same drawing that we just did on this ear on this one to generate this satin stitch. Use our line tool. We're going to start here, and then it comes up. We pick right about the apex of the curve, and then I'm going to put one kind of on this side, then there, come up and around, say to there, back to the other side, close the shape, Shift C, there we go. Use our select tool, and then hit our shape tool here, and start pulling out our curves. I really love the way that this works, to be able to pull out your curves like this. It is so much better than trying to manually click every click to make a perfect curve. Yeah, perfect curve. Like, it's possible to do that without this tool. It's almost impossible, I think. Once you get the hang of it, it's really quite powerful. So that is pretty much good enough for me right now. There we go. I'm satisfied. And remember, we are using the Auto Satin tool for this. So we hit Auto Satin, generates us a really nice, beautiful satin stitch there. And again, we want our start and our stop point in the same place here. And it is automatically, because it kind of can tell what I'm doing. And now our next area is going to be this marking on his face. So we're going to use the line tool. I'm going to start on a cusp here, and then go to here. And again, we're just clicking where the curves are, or where the cusps are. So there, and then we're going to go up, and I'm going to, even though this isn't technically a cusp, I'm going to do that because it's a big long straightaway. There, and there, and then kind of mirror it on the other side. There, there, and then we can just close the shape here, because this is one big long curve here. So Shift C and Select tool, it highlights it. We use the shape tool, and we're going to start pulling in our curves. So we got this one. We're going to have to use the handles for this to get it perfect. Select the line, adjust the handle. And let's see, we'll get it a little closer over there. Perfect. And then this one just pulls straight up. You fatten it a little bit with the handles. That looks good. Pull this curve in, and this curve in. This curve up like this. This one down. See how easy that is? This kind of could even use another point here. So if you right click, you can choose add a point, and then I can adjust my curve even more. And I can move individual points if I need to, just like that. Okay, wonderful. Now this, we're going to use our preset, which is the dog fur. There we go. Just like that, we've got our nice, beautifully textured dog. And now we just have to do his beige markings, and then we're going to do the shading. And no, actually, I guess we'll do the pink ears. It doesn't really matter what order we do that in. But so anyway, so next we're going to do these guys here, the beige markings. Now I am going to turn off my 3D before I start this. I really had just had the 3D on to show you what that special fill looked like. And I think, let's see. Yeah, we'll draw the leg, and then his butt, and then his other leg. That's the order that I'm going to go in. I'm going to go this leg, butt, other leg. So we'll just go ahead and use our line tool. If you like, you can zoom in here and use my arrow keys to pan down. Let's see, we're going to click here, and then right at the beginning of this curve to there. If you don't like where your point ended up, by the way, backspace is how you go back. Then I'm going to go up to here, here, here. I'm going to close my shape, and let's go ahead and let's change the color. We want this to be like a cream color, and then use the shape tool to pull out our curves. There. Select the curve and make it a little wider on both sides. That looks pretty good. Pull this down, and I think that's all I have to do for this. Okay, and we're gonna use our fur preset for that. This big long thing here is just indicating that the machine has to travel from all the way up there back down to here. It's not actually a jump stitch. And now we finally are going to set our start and stop points. The start point is fine, the stop point is fine. We just want to make sure the start point of his butt is going to be right there. Remember, we're ignoring the shaded areas for right now. So we don't need a travel stitch because these two areas butt up against each other. And we're going to start clicking on the cusps of this shape. Here, and this isn't really a cusp, but I'm going to make it a point anyway. And then travel around up here to here, and then put one here, and then I'm going to close this shape. Hit the select tool, use the shape tool, and start pulling out our curves. There. Fatten it up on that side like that, using the handle. This pulls out here, and then this all the way down. Select the curve, adjust the handles. The technical term for these handles is Bezier handles, by the way, in case you were curious about that. Alright, so that looks pretty good. And we're going to apply our dog fur stitch, just so. Now, this area here and this area here, this bit of fill and this bit of fill, they are right next to each other, and they need to overlap. Otherwise, you're going to have gapping in here, right? So when you're putting areas that are fill areas right next to one another, that is a consideration that you have to make. So we can see that there's going to be gapping here, there's going to be gapping here. So we actually need to adjust this shape a little bit to avoid that. So I'm going to go and reselect him and use my shape tool. I'm going to pull, I'm going to pull this edge out a little bit over here to make that overlap, which for some reason has just screwed up my curve. And we want this curve to be up a little bit anyway so that it overlaps. Right click to generate what we've done. We can see that there's still a gap here. So we're going to move this entire point this time. There we go. That should be okay. Okay, so that's just a consideration when you're putting a fill next to a fill. You always want to take a look at it and make sure that you know, that there's a little bit of overlap. Otherwise, it's going to be a gap. Actually, I'm looking at this shape. I kind of want to pull this part out a little bit too. Fatten that up. That'll work. Alright, so anyway, next we're going to make sure that, go back down here, we're going to make sure that this last one that we did, the start and the stop are in a reasonable place. The start is, we want the stop to be down here though, so that it can go right to this next leg. Okay, and then we use our shape, our line tool rather, to start drawing in the next shape. There, there, and then the final one is the one we use the close shape tool on. Our select tool, shape, bring in our curves. It's really not much, it's really the only curve on there. So there we go, and we're going to apply our specialty fill. Wonderful. Now, there's not a reasonable way for us oh, you know what? I forgot about the shadow down here. We can't travel through the shadow though, because if we do the shadow, that actually needs to sew down first. So we can't really make a traveling stitch. I didn't even think about the shadow. Alright, I'm going to pretend like this shadow here doesn't exist. And we're just going to go straight over to here. We don't have to worry about a stop point for this, because there's no way to make that go to that without a jump stitch. So we're just going to let this be a jump stitch in here, and it's going to be fine. So let's zoom in a little bit, and we're going to do his front legs. They should be pretty easy. Use the line tool. Put one here, here right before the curve starts, here, here, and then close the shape, Shift C. Use the select tool and then the shape tool. Pull this curve down. That's the only curve in this shape. So that is it. We reselect it, go back to our dog fur preset. There we go. Same thing for the other forepaw here. Here, here, right at the beginning of the curve. Back over here, close the shape, Shift C. Hit the select tool, hit the shape tool, and pull this down. Might need to fatten it up a little bit. And this one has a little bit of a dip in the top. Okay, and apply dog fur. Wonderful. So now we've got this part of his face to do next. And we're gonna just, again, we're ignoring the gray parts. So I'm gonna start here to here to here. We're not doing his ears either, by the way. His ears are gonna be a separate piece. So from here to here, you know what, I'm actually gonna redo that one, and then kind of down there to there to there. And now this is that same shape we drew before, basically, just we're drawing the other side of it. There, there, there. Now this one has kind of an S shape to it, so I'm going to put one right in the middle, and then Shift C, select, use the shape tool, and start pulling out our curves. There, 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 there. That all looks pretty good. Why do I have 2 points there? Whatever. Alright, so that'll work. We select it with the select tool. Go back down here to the our specialty fill, the dog fur, and there we go. So that looks pretty good. Now we're going to do his ears, and one of these can have no jump, and then there's going to be a jump to get to the other one. So let's set our start and stop point for this. Use the shape tool for that. We need our stop point to be up here, and our start point may as well be close to the stop point of the last one, so we'll leave it right there. So then we're going to draw the inner ear next. Use the shape or the line tool rather, and we'll just go here, 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 and then close the shape. Okay. Select, shape tool, Pull that up, pull this out. That looks pretty good to me. We'll right click to generate that. And we will apply our dog fur to it. Okay. Now this one, the start point should be here, and it is. The stop point, we'll just move it as close to the next element as we can. And we're going to do the same thing, just we're going to draw it over here. Line tool, point, 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 close the shape, Shift C, select tool, shape tool, pull out our curves. Okay, we're going to select that and then use the dog fur fill. Okay. If we wanted to, we could choose a different type of fill for, say we wanted his ears to look a little bit different, say. We could use a standard fill for those, to make them a different pattern. That's totally up to you. You have creative control over how your designs look. So if you want this to be a different type of pattern, you can experiment with different patterns. So like there's like a snakeskin pattern. You can make interesting looking different types of fills just by playing with the type of fill that you have in there. So if you wanted to, you can do that. I did. So let's turn off our 3D and take a look at what we got. We've got the pink on his ears, and we've got the black in his eyes and his nose, and then we've got the kind of gray shadow. Let's go ahead and do the pink next. Now, for this, we're actually layering stitching on top of other stitching, which you have a choice of whether you want to do layers, essentially. Like, we could cut holes in the ears, the stitches of the ears, and then it wouldn't be 2 layers. But I find that 2 layers on top of one another is generally okay. There's just a couple things you want to make sure of when you do this. So we want to just draw. Let's start drawing in the pink area first. I'm going to put a point here. This is such a sharp curve that I might as well just put a point up there as if it was a cusp. And then I'm going to put one here, and then we're going to close the shape, Shift C. Let's make it pink. And then use the shape tool to pull out the curves there, there, and there. And then we're going to put just a standard fill there for that. Or we could do the dog fur. It's up to you, however you want it to be. But one thing we want to do is when you are layering fill stitch on top of another fill stitch, you want to not have any underlay because the stitching that's already there is going to act as underlay. So you want to go over to the underlay tab in your properties of this object, and we want to turn that off and hit apply. That way there's nothing checked in underlay. That is going to make this work better when we go to sew it out. So we're going to draw the same thing over here. I'm just going to do a point here, 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 close the shape, Shift C, select with the select tool, and then use the shape here to pull out my curves, there, there, and there. Reselect it, make it a fill, and let's turn off the underlay, hit apply. Alright, there's going to be a jump from there to there. There's no 2 ways about it. There's just no way to put a travel stitch in there. So that is the ears. Put it in 3D and take a look. He's coming together. He's coming together. I think the shadows are what's really going to give him the definition to make him look really good. So let's do the shadows next, because the black is a little bit on top of this one shadow. So the way we're going to do these shadows, we're going to do them with really, really loose satin and fill stitches. So for the real skinny parts are going to be satin stitches, and the thicker parts like this and this are going to be fill stitches. And we're going to do them, let's see, what order do I want to do this in? I suppose it doesn't really make that big a difference because we can't jump around through many of these. I mean, obviously we'll do this part and this part right one after another, but let's just go kind of from left to right. We'll start with this butt shadow here. We're going to use the line tool, put one here, I'm going to put one here. That's going to be the inside line, and then, well, we'll get one out in here anyway just to make it a complete shape, and then Shift C. Use the select tool to select it. We'll make it a gray, dark gray, and then use the shape tool to pull these curves in here and here and here. So that's a nice shape we've made. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do that that auto satin tool again, but just like how I didn't want there to be any underlay with the fill that I was doing, I don't want there to be any underlay under the satin. So we're going to go to underlay, turn everything off, anything that's selected we want to turn off. It'll be parallel, will be selected. Turn that off and hit apply. And then the other thing we want to do is, well, there's two more things we want to do. Under the fill tab, we need the density to be much less. We don't want this to be a super dense fill. We want it to be loose. So we're going to change this value. We're going to up it all the way up to 1 and hit apply. And then, well, that might be a little bit much. Let's turn it down a little bit. 0.8, okay. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to try to get rid of this line that's running through the middle. And the way we do that is we make our start and our stop points on opposite ends. See? Just like just a little hint of shadow. Okay, now we're going to go and trace. The next thing we're going to trace is this part down here. And this one we're going to do as a fill stitch. So we're just going to trace from here down to here, here, and here, and then we're going to close this shape. So that's Shift C and select it. And we're going to use our shape tool, pull the curves out there and there. Okay, back to the select tool. Oh, you know what? I really didn't get those points in exactly the right place. I'm going to pull this out and make kind of a little curve there so that it's pulled out more like it is in the picture. Anyway, now we're going to apply a standard fill this time, but we're going to make some changes. Let's change our density to, say, 0.8, see how that looks. We're going to get rid of the underlay, and we're going to change something called the connection end, which is the ends of the points on the way the stitch is. We're going to go over here to general and change the connection end. That's how it generates the fill. We can do kind of a thing that's like a satin stitch. If we set this to sharp and hit apply, what this does is it makes almost a satin stitch, but instead of being a satin stitch, what it does is it runs the whole way. So it's like a running stitch that's doing this. That's what a sharp connection end does. And that allows us to make a much wider area that looks like a satin stitch. Notice there's a little bit of a travel stitch going on in there. That's because we've not set the start and stop points to be on opposite sides. So we're going to hit the shape tool, move our start and our stop point onto opposite sides. We actually probably want the stop, or no, I'm sorry. We want the stop to be down here and the start to be up here. Okay. And that's going to be a good little bit of shading there. So now the next spot is this big long guy up here. We're going to do him as a satin stitch. Hit the wrong button there. Alright, so we're going to click once here, and then down here, and then close the shape. Now we're going to select it, use the shape tool, and pull our curves out to make this little crescent shape. Looks pretty good. And we're going to apply the auto satin to this and turn off the underlay. And the start and stop points are already set in the appropriate way. So let's take a look. Actually, no, we want the start and stop points to be actually in, what's going on here? What did I just do? I just messed it up. If you mess something up and you don't know how you did it, just hit undo up here. Undo. There we go. I don't know what I did, but we actually want the start and the stop points not only on opposite sides, but we actually want the start for this one to be up at the top and the stop to be down here. That way it doesn't have to trim to go to this next area. So we're going to have the start all the way up at the top and the stop down here. Wonderful. Doesn't change the way that it looks. It just makes it so that we'll not have a jump. So we're going to trace this area of shading here, here to here, to here, to here, to here, and then close the shape. And use the select tool to then open up the shape tool. There are my kind of curves for this. Okay, let's see what we can do with this little shading bit. We're gonna make it a fill, and underlay we want none. And we could actually have made a preset for this. If I was smart, I would have done that. Fill, and then we set this to a higher number. I accidentally right-clicked is what that was all about. Hit apply. Let's see what that looks like. Put it in 3D and take a look. Yeah, I'm going to leave it going this way to do full coverage. And then we're going to set our start and our stop points on opposite ends so that it hopefully gets rid of that line in the middle. It didn't, though. Well, we definitely need to get rid of the line in the middle. So we have to twiddle our start and our stop points until it's gone. So let's see what happens. Okay, so in that corner and in that corner it gets rid of the travel stitch on the inside. So that means there's going to be a jump to get to down here. There's nothing we can really do about it. Alright, so now the next little area of shading is this down here. So we're going to use our line tool and go here, here, make that one curve, to here, and then close the shape. Alright, and then use the shape tool, bring this down. Okay, looks good. Select tool. And then we are going to, let's see, we'll make this the same kind as this one. So that's going to be a fill. Set the density to 0.8. We turn off the underlay over here. We hit underlay, turn off the perpendicular underlay, hit apply. And we're going to make this under general, we're going to make this a sharp and hit apply. Okay. And we've got this little area under his neck. Can you guess what type of stitch that's going to be? If you guessed satin, you were right. So we use the line tool, put in 1 point here, 2, 3. Close the shape, Shift C, and then select it, hit the shape tool, and we're going to drag out our curves just like that. Perfect. And we want this to be a satin, so we hit this one here, Auto Satin. We want the density to be a little bit lower, so that's a higher value. Okay, and then we turn off the underlay, and we need to adjust our start and our stop point so that they are on opposite ends. Looks great. And we've got this little bit of shading to define his jaw. So we're going to do click here, 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 here. Close the shape, Shift C. Select tool selects it. Shape tool lets us pull out our curves. And guess what this is going to be? Well, it's a skinny object, so that means it's going to be a satin. So we use the Auto Satin tool, and we go through all our rigmarole here. Increase the value on the density, which is going to lower the density. Turn off the underlay, hit apply, and then we need to adjust our start and stop point so that they are on opposite sides. I'm going to have this start over here and the stop over here. Awesome. Okay. We are nearly there. All we got to do is the black parts and the little white reflection in his eyes. So let's see. We're already right here, so we may as well do his nose first. So let's think about how to do his nose. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This part should be a fill stitch. This part should be a satin stitch. So how are we going to get... Actually, you know what this could be? This could be a run stitch. So let's do this part as a run stitch. So we're going to go up and use our run stitch tool up here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do this as if we were sketching. So we're going to go and we're going to run over a couple of times to make it nice and bold. We'll go one click here, 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 and then back up. And then we're going to go back over ourselves a couple of times to make it nice and bold. Okay, now we right click to generate, and now we've got, put this in 3D, we've got his little doggy mouth going on right there. Now we could go over that a couple of more times to make it a little bit bolder. I'd have to sew it out to see how that looks, but it would be a simple thing to just go ahead and draw more on top of that if we need it. It's really hard to tell with a run stitch on the computer whether it's going to be bold enough. I'm going to say that I think it probably will be, even though it looks really thin. The computer does a very poor job rendering what a run stitch is going to look like. Alright, so now we need to draw his nose in, so we're going to use the line tool for that. And let's see, we've got click here and here, and then we'll put one in here just so that we have a line to complete our shape. Hit Shift C, select it, use the shape tool, there, there, and there. Make that a fill stitch, and we're just going to do just a regular fill stitch there. We're going to make sure our start point is right there, and we're going to have the stop point be, oops, say up there, so that it can cross over to the eye. Okay, now these eyes are perfect circles, so there's a way to make a perfect circle. Oh, what's one thing we need to do though to this? It's a fill stitch on top of a fill stitch. That means we have to get rid of the underlay, right? If that's what you said. So we hit the underlay and we turn that off so that there's no underlay under that. Alright, so now we have perfect circles. We have a tool just for that. So right up here, if you hover your mouse over it, it says rectangle, but what this should say is shape, because this has auto shapes, one of which is a circle. So we're going to grab the circle, and the way you draw circles on a computer is you want to imagine a rectangle around the circle that you're tracing, and start at the top left corner of where that rectangle would be, and then click and drag and your circle will be in just the right place. Okay, so there we've got a nice circle there. Select that, and we're going to make it a fill. And then we're going to turn off the underlay. And we're going to do another one over here. And we can actually copy and paste this. So if you right-click, copy, right-click, paste, that generates a second one, which we can then move over to here and avoid having to draw it twice. Okay. Then the last bit is the whites in his eyes. And little teeny tiny circles like this are impossible to make with the auto stitches. Okay, you can't do it. You can't make a circle that little and then apply a stitch to it and have it look good. So what do? Well, we're going to use the run stitch tool to draw his eyes in manually. So we're going to click on the run stitch tool. We're going to go and select white. This is our last color. And then we're just going to kind of zigzag back and forth to fill in this white area with stitches, just like that. Okay, that's perfect. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. Boop, 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 boop. Alright, put the whole thing in 3D, zoom out, and see what we got. We got a little dog. So that's it. I mean, he's digitized. We can turn off the backdrop and take a look. If we select our backdrop tool and then move over here somewhere, right click and uncheck show backdrop, That's our design right there. He is done. Now, is he the the most amazing? It's I think it's pretty cool though. So that is what I think is kind of a quick and easy crash course on the fundamentals of digitizing an embroidery design from scratch. So if you have trouble, just pause the video, go back, make sure that you're doing everything exactly the way that I told you to do it, and you should be able to do this kind of stuff. It's pretty easy. So hope you like this video. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.